Hello, how you doing? My name is T.M.sTeeVe Vns. Generally, the band travels in a limo. I travel in the back of the van with the equipment. I want to welcome you to my world. I think I hear some music. Do you hear some music? Stay tuned. You're watching T.M.sTeeVe Vns' instructional video. Come on inside, man. Check this out. Check this out. Yeah, man. I think there's a groove going on. I hear the funk. Yeah. Come on and check it out. Yeah, man. My name is T.M.sTeeVe Vns. Glad you're aboard. Thank you for purchasing my video. Today we're going to cover a lot of ground. And while we're at it, wait a minute. How? Yow, hey, ow. I'm back. So sit down, relax, and we will take you through a journey on the final frontier of bass. The final frontier. Peace. Don't go nowhere. Oh, the old early years, yeah. Well, when I first started, I started playing at 11 years old. And back then, if you couldn't play anything funky, you just couldn't hang out, you know. So, in the early years, I started out with the R&B, and I began to buy records by Mahavishnu Orchestra back then. I bought records Miles Davis, and incidentally, I ended up playing with all of those people. I think it must have been a good accident, but it was wonderful. So my early years, I went out on the road playing with Stacy Lattisaw, which was more of an R&B act. And then somehow I got picked up by Norman Connors and Pharoah Sanders, who's a jazz horn player. And from there, I went into jazz and fusion with Mahavishnu, Al Di Meola. We opened for Billy Cobham. And my first official band was Narada Michael Walden, who also played with Mahavishnu. So it was very interesting. And I would do a Broadway play in which I met Narada Michael Walden because it was across the street from the Professional Percussion Center. And Narada said, would you come and play with me for half the money? And I said, I'm an artist first, so I left the play, I left the security and went on the road in a station wagon. And I've been gone ever since. Yeah. My musical influences started out when I was very young with the Reverend Jimi Hendrix. And the very first songs I ever played was a James Brown piece, because I learned to play bass actually in Harlem, which is on 131st Street, which is Small's Paradise. And back then there was big jazz artists playing every like night, and I would go down and listen to what they did. So at an early age, I was actually influenced by jazz, later to be influenced more by rock and roll and soul. But soul was my first thing, which is the Motown era. James Jamerson was one of the famous bass players that played with the Jackson 5 and you name it, Four Tops. And his style of bass playing is very rhythmic, but extremely complex, off the root notes, which we'll get into later in the video. Larry Graham was another one of my favorite influences. He's the bass player from Sly and the Family Stone, and he initiated the thumb technique. There's a lot of controversy about who invented thumb. Larry Graham, I just want to say officially invented the thumb playing. Other players, like I said, Jimi Hendrix influenced me. Jimmy Page with Led Zeppelin was a big influence because of his originality. Sly and the Family Stone. I like Metallica too. And as we go on in the video, I'll tell you a few more, but those are my basic influences. And of course, Miles Davis and early jazz because of the experimentation. Right now, I want to talk about the absolute basics of this instrument. To play all of the pyro type things, that is to say all of the fancy techniques and fast playing and all the innovations that we will cover a little later that you can do with this instrument, we'd like to talk about the basement, which is what you need to actually put your house on. If you have no basement, then your house will collapse. All right, let's start with how to hold the instrument. Some players like Anthony Jackson, a very good player, great player, a friend of mine, he actually sits. And if you can see, he plays basically with his arm braced over the bass, thusly, and his fingers and wrist are curved. And the fingers are actually in this angle, to the side, not necessarily straight, but to the side. In this hand, you have to pretend that you have sort of a baseball or an egg in your hand, hence it's curved. This prevents you from getting cramps or cramp too easy. So if you can see it, I'll come this way. This is the correct position on the bass. Okay. When you're playing, actually in the finger positions, you want to spread your fingers so that if you're in, say, the key of C, that all four fingers are covering 4 frets. Thusly and backwards. Some of us, and a lot of players and myself when I first started, used to play things where we would go this way, slide this way, this way, this way, and mix the fingerings up. When you actually put your fingers in the right position, you're able to get a bit more speed and accuracy. Okay, next, it's your thumb. Should be against the bass in such a way where it's supporting your fingers. Some players tend to play with their finger this way. You're not in a good position to actually hit with accuracy on a lot of the frets. So you don't want to play this way. You want to play more this way. Okay? Next, I'd like to cover how you hold the instrument in the standing position. Now, I'm a big Jimmy Page fan. And I'm also very tall, if you haven't noticed. My arms are very long. Most players tend to play with the bass and the strap real tight up in this position. This is actually comfortable and better for you to see if you're able to look at the instrument and play different notes. In my case, because of my reach, I probably should have been a basketball player. I like it down here, okay? And sometimes even lower. So when I'm playing, I don't like to bend my arm, I like to stretch it. So now I'm actually in a comfortable position as if I were walking, and I'm able to play. Okay? Next, we'd like to demonstrate, or I would like to demonstrate, finger technique. Some bass players, great bass players actually, play with a pick to get a plectrum sound, or more of a... In my particular case, I use the fingers for that, and I've never played with a pick because for my taste, I like the sound of actually fingers on the strings. So what I do is I practice. If, say, we choose a note like C sharp for no other reason, I'll take my fingers. If you can watch, I'll do it real slow. I'll count in 16 notes. 1 E and a. 1 E and a, 2